Hi, this is Lily McCutcheon from the Ohio Genealogical Society, and it is July 27th, 2023. And we are here today for a webinar given by Jenna Kish, our digital archivist, period, on unearthing family stories, navigating the Ohio Genealogical Society's manuscript key and finding aids. I, for one, am glad to be here to hear this because I always learn something new. It'll last about an hour and we'll save questions for the end. With that, Jenna, take it away.
Yeah, so as Lily said, I am Jenna Kish. I am OGS's archivist. We will be going over the manuscript key and finding aids in this presentation. So hopefully you will leave this webinar with a better understanding of OGS's archives and leave with some strategies about searching our archival collection. So we'll start with an outline of the presentation. So just some brief introductory material. What are archives in general? What does OGS have specifically? And then also, how do you find those materials in OGS's archive? So then the second half of this presentation will be a walkthrough of the manuscript key, some finding aids, and then we'll also show you how archival collections display in the catalog. Our librarian, Linda Swanson, has done an in-depth deep dive sort of into the catalog and how to search the catalog for books and other resources. So if you're interested in a more in-depth walkthrough of the catalog, I would recommend you watch her webinars, which are also recorded and available on our website. And then we'll end with some time for questions. So to begin, what are archives and archival materials? So archives formally are records created by a person, family, or organization and are preserved because of their continuing value. They also include unpublished materials often, or manuscripts. So archival materials and manuscripts are materials whose purpose has changed over time. They are still a valuable resource, but what they were intended for has changed over time. So the how and why they are used is what has evolved. So a good example of this that many of you probably know are tax lists. They were originally created and used by county and city governments to track and collect revenue, but today genealogists often use them to trace tax-paying ancestors between the census. So here we see an evolution of a resource's purpose or its value to modern people. Another sort of common example are family records such as obituaries, letters, and photographs. They were created and used during an ancestor's lifetime to document important events, preserve memories, and inform family and friends about current events. Today, genealogists use them to explore family connections and relationships, as well as tell a family story. So these types of records can really flesh out an ancestor for you. So what does OGS have specifically? So we do have tax duplicates from Fulton and Richland counties. We also have the Ohio Photograph Collection, which is broken down into two separate groups. The people group, which is alphabetized by surname. So if we received a couple of individual photographs which were named, they would go in Ohio Photograph Collection under our people section. Or we have the places group of the Ohio Photograph Collection, which is includes postcards, but it is photos and postcards of areas and cities around the state of Ohio. We also have a lot of historic maps and atlases. So if you're tracing any ancestors and aren't really sure about the historical boundaries of a county or what railroads would have been nearby, historic maps can definitely help you with that. We also have quite a few single family genealogy research collections. So these are individual people who donated their research to us. And we also have a lot of scrapbooks, diaries, and journals that make up the archives as well from all over. And we'll see some more specific resources in the manuscript key once we get there. Also wanted to mention that the OGS Lineage Society member files are a part of the archives. We're not going to get too much into how to use the rosters for the lineage societies today, but if you wanted to look for ancestors who have been inducted into OGS's lineage societies, that is on our website under About and then Lineage Societies. The PDF is under each individual lineage society's page. So how do you find things? We have three major types of reference resources here that kind of enable our patrons to browse our archival collections. One being the manuscript key, which is just what we call it. It is a list of manuscript and archival collections held by the OGS, which gives their call number, their title, as well as any additional notes. The manuscript key is now organized by the collection subject, and we'll talk a little bit more about what those subjects are and how I've defined those subjects and sorted collections into subjects. The second major resource are finding aids. And finding aids are a guide which explains how a collection is organized and what it contains, as well as any sort of contextual information or background information that would help someone understand what they're looking at and understand the creator. And again, we'll briefly go to the library catalog to see how archival collections display in the library catalog. So all of these resources are available on OGS's website. You do not have to be a member to view these resources. Manuscript keys and finding aids are available under Genealogy Resources, Library Special Collections, and then filter for archive collections. And I will show you how to do that. And then the catalog has its own button under Genealogy Resources. It's the very first button you can push. It'll take you to the library catalog. So without further ado, we'll move on to the walkthroughs. So I will stop sharing my screen so we can hop over to the manuscript key. Alrighty, get sharing again. So, all right, there we go. So our OGS website is just ogs.org. As a note, I am using Google Chrome as my browser and I'm on a desktop computer. If you are using a tablet or a cell phone, these will look differently. But if you are on a desktop using a different browser, something other than Chrome, it will look the same more or less. There might be some sort of design differences with the browser, but the steps you will take will be the same. So if you're on a tablet or phone, more than likely, the PDFs I show you will download to your phone and you'll have to find them. So just wanted to put that caveat out there. It might look slightly differently depending on what you are using. So to begin, we go to Genealogy Resources. You'll want to go to Library Special Collections. So there are a lot of different things that fall under Library Special Collections, such as the yearbook collection and our city directories. But if you just want to see archive collections, on this left-hand filter side, you will want to click Archive Collections, and it will filter and only give you the manuscript key and all of the finding aids that have been uploaded to the website so far. So these first two boxes that you will see here, Archive Collections and Manuscript Key, open to the same exact document. We wanted to make sure that we were getting everybody and no one was being confused or was, getting confused about the manuscript key. So we posted it twice, but they're the exact same document. So if you're on a browser, it will open up in another tab. It is a PDF. So we'll close this page viewer. You can leave it open if you like, but I like to close it. And then I'll zoom in a little bit. So in the manuscript key, all of these blue titles are hyperlinked. So if you click any one of these blue titles, it will jump to that resource page. So we can click any one of these and it's going to take us to that section. Also, an important thing to note is some collections are listed twice. So if a collection fell into 2 different categories, I posted it twice. So an example of that is if we go to letters, diaries, and journals, is this letter to H.P. Davis. It also includes a list of local men who volunteered to join the New York Infantry and then other OVIs. So not only is it a letter, it is also related to the Civil War. So if we scroll down to the military section, which is just the next section, there it is again, letter to H.P. Davis. So don't get too caught up in picking the right subject. If it has fallen into 2 categories, I have placed it twice. So just any type of specific theme or subject that a collection had is kind of what made it fall into one bucket or another. So I want to kind of go over a few of these subject headings that are a little bit more, I don't know, obtuse maybe, not as readily understood. And one of the first ones is compiled resources. So I have defined compiled resources as a collection whose information comes from other primary resources, such as newspapers or books, and based around a common subject or theme, such as a church, community, or a lineage. This section also includes research or drafts of published works. And if it is a published work, that would appear in the notes column. And if it's in the OGS library, that will also appear in the notes column. So just to point out a few examples to you, the Crawford County German Origins is a compiled resource. It's the ancestral lines of common German surnames found in Crawford County. This creator found some German surnames in the Crawford County census records, and then decided to do extra research on those specific families of Crawford County, and they put them all together. Another good example of this is the Reformed Presbyterian Church of America biographies and obituaries of Guernsey, Mahoning, and Greene counties. This one is also a compiled resource, and it specifically follows members of this specific church in those 3 counties, and someone went through the county histories and the newspapers, collecting obituaries and biographies to put in this collection. So to kind of track families based on this specific church in these 3 counties. And so another good example is the Ohio History Connection Family History Collection, which is also a compiled resource. So that was it. There's Tara's cut.
Thank you. We'll end it. Hold on.
OHC Family History. Oh, got it. So the OHC Family History Collection is also a compiled resource. It is actually a collection of materials from hundreds of families across the state of Ohio. It was formerly at Ohio History Connection. They had been collecting family materials since the 1960s and had been receiving donations of family group sheets, Bible records, family histories, and other types of narratives about people's families. And then in 2017, they donated it to us. So that's what this collection is. It's just a compilation of resources under one header. So then the next big one I would like to hit is vital information from non-traditional sources. So this I have defined as information, items that you do not immediately think of when researching, but that can contain information on your ancestors. I know some of our presenters at conferences and fall retreats past have talked about widening your scope of resources and thinking outside of just what the county courthouse would have. So that's what these kind of resources are. So some of the, or two of the major types that OGS has are funeral home records, so ledgers and journals that have been donated to us from the families whose parents or grandparents owned a funeral home and left all their ledger books in the building, and then they donated them to us, as well as physicians' ledgers and records. So physicians who were in private practice in sort of the 1900s kept their own ledger books. I'm sure you've heard those stories of, the doctor went around, but then all the kids kind of had the same birthday when he went to the courthouse finally to declare that he, a live birth. So we also have a couple of physicians' journals, as well as funeral home register books. We've gotten those from families as well as other sort of account books. So people who were in businesses or who loaned money. So these ones are worth looking into if you kind of know your ancestor was living in a certain area at a certain time. Similarly, store ledgers kind of operate in a sort of similar space. So they aren't necessarily going to give you birth, marriage, death information, but you might be able to see what they had on account. So what were they buying? How much were they buying? How much did they let their debt rack up? Was someone paying for their mother's account or their tab? Because that does happen where you'll see that someone else is coming in and they're paying the tab of another person, and the store ledger would note that. So store ledgers can just kind of enhance a narrative. Or if you can't find someone in a tax list and you're wondering if there's a chance that they're appearing somewhere else, a store ledger could at least say, well, they were here between these months buying things. So just another kind of unique resource to look out for, not only when you're at OGS, but also at other sort of historical societies that are local to the area that your family might have. You never know what was kept and what still exists. So it's, important to give it in the back of your head if you ever hit that brick wall of like, well, what else might still exist out there? All right, so as promised, we will scroll up here to try not to make you too dizzy. Yeah, this way. So probably one of our biggest subjects or subsections is family collections. So family collections have two parts. They are both research collections that were genealogists researching their family lines and documenting them. And they are also historical primary documents from a single family. And a lot of times, if we do get a donation from a genealogist, we will also get the historical documents from their more immediate family. So typically we will see, the documents from their grandparents or their great grandparents that are, their immediate family members who they might have known. So a lot of times there is overlap in these collections, but sometimes they do fall into two distinct camps. So one is research and one is all primary historical documents. So briefly point out another example. Of course, she's the exception, not the rule. But we do have Carol Wilsey Bell's collection, for example. So we do have collections from people who were professional genealogists and who did do client work. So occasionally you will find collections that are, not only Carol Bell's immediate family and the documents from her immediate family, but also lines that she researched for others. And the finding aid would talk about that, which we'll get to later. But that type of information, that's like a heads up of like, Carol Bell is not related to this family. She just researched for this individual. That type of information would be flagged in the finding aid. And then another collection that happens to be all primary documents is, it's always farther down. is the Sherwood family collection of Morgan and Licking counties, and I gave specific dates. So that's kind of a hint if it is like a fully historical collection, if I can put very specific dates on it. So this family collection just happens to be letters and photographs and then some journals. All right, so in this 69-page document, how do you find your specific surname? So probably the easiest way to look for surnames in a document like this is a keyboard command. So if you're on a Windows computer, it is Control F, and it'll bring up a little search box here. If you're on a Mac, it's Command F, but it's the same function of bringing up this little search box here. Another way to find that search box is to do, again, depending on your browser, it'll look a little different, but there should be some sort of either 3 dots or settings section on your browser, and you'll look for something called Find, and it'll either be Find or Find on Page, but it's the same function where you can bring up a little search box that will search all of the text on your web page. So this works for any browser, any computer, any web page. So not just OGS, you can use it on either Family Search or Ancestry, so long as there's text on a page. You can't necessarily search within an image, but if it is text on a page, your computer can read it. So it's a very handy tool when you're looking for specific things. So for example, in this box, you can type anything, and it will pull all of the text it finds that is spelled exactly as you've typed it. So if your ancestor has alternate spellings, it is worthwhile to go through those alternate spellings and find them. I wouldn't necessarily do first name and last name. I would keep it to last name only, just because another genealogist might have spelled it differently in the past, or they might have dropped the middle initial. They might have done middle initial period. They might have spelled out the full middle name. So because of those variations, I would recommend just keeping it to the surname only, unless they have a very unique first name that you're like, oh, they never, they wouldn't have put it under anything else. So just be mindful of your search terms, just with any other type of research you've done in Family Search or Ancestry. The spelling does change and does matter. If you would like to do, maybe the first 3 letters are always the same, but then the rest of it kind of changes, you could do it that way as well. Of course, you'll get ones like this where it's Greenlee rather than Leedy, or you could do Welsh. Is it with a C rather than an S? It will change. So just kind of something to be mindful of as you're using this search box. It is a very handy tool, but you might need to do some different options to make sure you're not missing anything. You could, of course, also do counties. So if you have people in Cuyahoga and you want to see all of the Cuyahoga records that we have that might be of interest to you, you could look in any sort of county resource that we have. So we have, plat maps from Cuyahoga County that is from a specific mortgage company that was in Cuyahoga County for this specific time frame. We also have a funeral home ledger for Cuyahoga County. We have the lineage applications. We have other township records from Cuyahoga, as well as some Bibles and birthday books from Cuyahoga. So on the off chance, if you're looking for your fan club, so friends, acquaintances, neighbors, kind of looking for county records that might also include your ancestor, could be another helpful way to go at this, is looking for places where they lived or churches that they might have attended to see if they appear. So if you want to navigate with the search box, you could either use these up and down arrows and click through those and click through that way. It'll always show you here. It's a little hard to see, and I can't make it bigger, but it'll always show what the number of results that you have and then which one that you're on. So you can do the up and down arrows if you like. You can also hit the enter button on your keyboard to go through them a little faster. So then to exit out of this, you can just click and we'll go back up to the top. Alrighty. So let's say you find something in this list. What now? Hop back over to the OGS website. So we'll move on to how to find finding aids on the website and kind of also go through some of the terminology that appears in a finding aid and just how to read them. So let's see here. How do I want to start? This is also another way you could get into the manuscript collections. It's just through collections that already have a finding aid. So not every collection in the manuscript key has a finding aid right now. It is something we are working on. We're about 50%, and I am uploading them kind of as we go. But right now, we have 50. It's probably more like 56. I think there's some stragglers in here that are not actually finding aids, but it is something to think about. If you want to start with ones that have already been documented and described, you can start here. So a couple of ways you can get in. So primarily with finding aids, we are filtering them by geography or by surnames. So these are either major counties in Ohio that a collection documents or major surnames that a collection has. So it's not exhaustive, but it is ones that we felt were significant enough to put in these filters. So to start with, just to make it easy on ourselves, if we want to see collections that have significant amounts of Ashland County, you can click Ashland County and it'll bring up finding aids that have significant amount of Ashland County information in them, whether that is research in Ashland County or an Ashland County family. It kind of goes both ways. And to go back to the beginning, you can click the X up here to remove the Ashland County filter. And of course, you could do that for all 88 of Ohio counties. So if a collection covers the entire state, it will not have a county filter. Or if it's too broad, it will not have a county filter. So the county filters are ones for have significant materials. So similarly with the surnames, you can start typing in the first 3 characters to see which surnames come up with those 3 characters. You could also type in the full surname and click to see what collections have a significant amount of the Smith surname. And with this, you do have to kind of delete and then search again to go back to the full list. So if we go back, let's say we're again back to Ashland County. If there are any parts of the collection that have been digitized, that will be noted, and we typically do it in this sort of subscript down here, and it will be hyperlinked to the digitized collection, and that type of information you would have to be a member to view. So we'll look at the Thelma Stierwalt Welsh collection for our finding aid here. Zoom in again. So as I mentioned in the beginning, finding aids are sort of standard across historical institutions. They aren't always going to be their own individual documents. Some institutions have them on a web page that is their own sort of integrated into their catalog. I know Western Reserve Historical Society does it that way, but this type of terminology you will see kind of appear again and again in archives because it is a standard in the sort of library science archives world. So some of these are pretty straightforward. Of course, the title, this at OGS is considered the call number is MSS 454. So if you were interested in seeing the Thelma Stierwalt Welsh collection, if you stop by the library, this is the number I would need to pull it for you, or a volunteer would need to pull it for you. Of course, we have location, the preferred citation. Not all institutions will give you a preferred citation, but that is just, how they would like you to note that you pulled this information from their institution. I'm sure everyone is citing their genealogy. of course, as well as dates. So dates at OGS, you might see it split into inclusive dates as well as bulk dates. So it's a little confusing, which is sometimes why I just do inclusive dates only. So inclusive dates being what is the earliest date in the collection and what is the latest date or most recent date in the collection. So the earliest piece of dated material in Thelma Welsh's collection is 1806, and the last piece of dated material in her collection is 1986. It's probably a letter. So quite a wide range, but if you were looking for, ancestor in, 1650, Thelma's collection might not help you for that specific ancestor. So something to keep in mind. So we also have any information about the creator. So here's her full name and her birth and death dates. We also will occasionally have a biography of the creator. So any information about them and their lives. So this is often either we talk to the creator themselves and we can have a little write-up about them and what they did and were they professional, were they a hobbyist, kind of how did they come to this work. So Thelma happened to have a very well-written obituary, so I was able to pull quite a lot from her obit. So that has been added. So she was not a professional, she did it as a hobby and enjoyed it. So that is the biography of the creator. If it was a company whose collection this was, it would be administrative history. So just a history about sort of when did the company start, what did they do? For example, we have a collection from the Mansfield YMCA. So if this was their collection, it would be administrative history. These are the dates it started. Here's the buildings they occupied. Here's what they did. So information like that. So it's just a slightly different term when it's a company or a business rather than a person, but they are still considered the creator, even if they are sort of like a business or company entity rather than a individual living person. So of course we have the donor information. And so another one that you'll probably want to look out for is scope and content. So scope and content, or the scope and content note, is essentially a summary of the collection. So what is it? What does it talk about? What does it contain? And any type of other sort of important information that the processor or the creator of the finding aid thought patrons should know about. So for Thelma, we're of course talking about she herself was from Ashland County. She had a lot of Ashland County lines. It also when she completed her research, because oftentimes that will kind of affect a collection's sort of content. Is if it was pre-internet or post-internet, it'll kind of give people a feel for what they'll actually be looking at. So it includes notes on the federal census as she's tracking her lines, as well as county histories. It contains her lineage charts and family trees. It also has a lot of correspondence between her and other genealogists about her lines and trying to parse out if they're related or not and what they know about specific ancestors. I also note here that she used scrap paper a lot. So there's a lot of sort of miscellaneous information that is not related to genealogy because she was using scrap paper. So just another important note. We also have a list of her major surnames. So if you're looking at this scope and content note and you see, Ashland County and you see, Lutz and Newcomer and Shearer, if that is your line of family grouped together in Ashland County, this might be a collection you're interested in. So a lot of times the scope and content note will kind of guide you and give you a sense of whether or not this could be a shared line and whether or not you're interested in it. So another sort of obtuse terminology is system of arrangement. So system of arrangement is simply how is the collection organized, as well as any other sort of special notes in regards to the order of the folders or the papers within. So for Thelma, her original order, so how she put the lines together and her materials, her collection came out of binders, was maintained with only a few loose papers interfiled at the time. So most of this is how Thelma intended it. She also had an extensive labeling system where she glued small tabs to individual papers and wrote the ancestors' names and dates on them. So you could kind of tell which resource belonged to a specific ancestor or specific family. So I tried to keep those on there as much as possible. The glue is pretty dry and crispy, but we tried to keep them on. So just to note, when you open up that folder or open up that box, what it looks like inside and kind of how it was treated when it was processed. So extent, you'll see a couple of different either sort of definitions or notes here. Sometimes it will be in linear feet. So how much space does the boxes take up on a shelf? Thelma's is 5 boxes, so it is 2.1 linear feet. So sometimes this measurement will be given in boxes. Sometimes it'll be given in linear feet. It just kind of depends on the institution's standard. Or if it is a smaller collection, it might just be 1 to 2 folders. And you'll see that in the catalog as well with some of our smaller collections. They will be, let's say, box 16, file 4. So the extent would just be 1 folder. So it's not a huge collection. Carol Bell's collection is, I believe, kind of at 30 boxes right now. So her collection is much, much larger, of course, because she was doing client work. So it is a much bigger collection because of that. So another one to point out is access. So Thelma's collection happens to have no access restrictions. However, you will see some collections here that do have access restrictions. So there could be an access restriction for physical access. So some of our collections are oversized and fragile because they are either court dockets or plat books or sort of large county journals that we kind of need to have 2 people handle to get them off the shelf safely. And if I flip back really quick to archive collections, those fragile and oversized collections will be noted in the manuscript key under the notes column. So the specific example I was thinking of are the Cuyahoga County plat maps from Land America, which was formerly Cuyahoga Abstract Title and Trust. So those are huge plat books that we keep on high shelves because they aren't pulled very often. So the manuscript key will note. So if there's no finding aid for a collection, the manuscript key will tell you if it is oversized and fragile, and if it should be requested in advance of your visit. And you can always email me directly if you're not sure. Always appreciate a heads up. So don't feel like you're bothering me if you aren't sure. All right. So then, the other option for access would be technical access. So technical access is if there was something that required special equipment to view. So if a collection had either a floppy disk or a CD that a family tree was on, that would be noted in technical access restrictions of you'll have to go. We do have an older computer here that can read CDs. So any type of that type of information of do you need special equipment to view certain parts of a collection, that would be in technical access. All right, so then we also have language. So if there were any foreign language documents within a collection, typically we see the most common foreign language we see here is German. So whether that was German New Script or German Old Script, that would be noted here. Or alternatively, it would be put in the notes field because some of our collections do have German language components. Maybe not all of them are in German, but parts of it might be. So that would be in the notes field alternatively. So provenance is just sort of more background information about the donor. Some of these can get longer. if there was more like changing of hands, or if there were additions to a collection, because sometimes families will find more items in their basement or garage as they're clearing out, and they'll be like, wait, there's more. So any type of that would be noted here. So then we get into the bulk of the finding aid, which is a folder by folder breakdown of what an archival collection contains. So some of these can get very detailed, others can just be sort of general surname files, and then they're in alphabetical order. It kind of depends on the collection and also the time period that the finding aid was written. So, but what is standard across all of them is something called file 0. So at OGS, file 0 contains any sort of contextual information about the donor. So typically, if the creator has passed away, it will contain their obituary. It might also have any type of biography of them that might be relevant to a patron's understanding of the collection. If we have any letters or emails between us and the donor, that would go in file 0, as well as the deed of gift goes in file 0. So it's worth a peek if you wanted to learn kind of more about who the creator was and kind of, or how OGS came to have a collection. You can always take a peek in file 0. If you just want the meat and potatoes, skip file 0 and keep scrolling. So if a box has a sort of specific theme, not all boxes do, but if a box does have sort of a specific theme to it, that will be noted in the description here. So this first box is predominantly her beginning research. It contains all her lines and all of her notes on the census and county histories and things like that. So nowadays, your modern genealogist can kind of instantly get to the census and the county histories. So this box might not interest you at all. So we'll scroll past box 1. And as you can see, we have the biographical annuals of Cumberland County, Pennsylvania. So you might already have these, so you're not interested. So box 2 is research and records about the Hershey family, the Lutz family, and the Newcomer family. Maybe those are your families of interest. Maybe you're specifically interested in these ancestors. So Stone, William Folkestone, and William Stone Jr. and Richard Stone. So maybe those are some people that, oh yeah, that is how I connect to Newcomer, Lutz, and Hershey's through the Stones. This might be a folder that, or a box that interests you. So if you were interested in this specific box, when you came to OGS, if you said, I'm interested in MSS 454, box 2, can I see it? Your answer is yes. Also, if you were interested in specific folders or files, you could also add a specific file number to that request, and we can just pull one file. You don't have to take the whole box with you. In fact, we probably prefer you do not take the whole box with you. All right, so similarly with the finding aid, Control F or Command F or your find on page tools on your computer will kind of be the easiest way to get into a finding aid. So Thelma's is 18 pages. You of course could browse those 18 pages and read it and see if anything's interesting. But if you're trying to target specific ancestors at this point in time, looking through the search feature is probably your quickest way to confirm or deny a theory of whether or not you share ancestors. And again, I would kind of keep it to surnames only unless your ancestor has a very unique first name or they don't have a middle initial. So you know they're never going to have a middle initial unless someone else is wrong. And you can also do, maybe you're interested in what she has on Westmoreland County, Pennsylvania. You could also do that, kind of go at it that way. So not only thinking about specific ancestors, but also specific areas to see, maybe she's related to you through a different line. So there might be other information about the family more broadly that still might be of interest to you. So broadening your horizons there. All right, so we go out of the finding aids and go back to ogs.org. We're going to move on to how to see archive collections in the catalog. So let's say that you prefer to use the catalog as your search method. It's more intuitive to you. Slowly but surely, I am cataloging archival collections so that they appear as a catalog entry like a book does. So if you're at OGS's website again, OGS Library Catalog is the first one. So I'm going to open a new tab just because that's my preference. But if you clicked OGS Library Catalog, it would take you out of OGS's website and you can just go back. But I like opening in a new tab. So I won't belabor the catalog too much. Again, Linda Swanson has discussed the catalog in depth, and what she talks about in her presentation is applicable to archival collections as well. So let's say it's probably easiest to do surname or keyword searches here as well. So let's say that you're looking for the Stone family in the catalog. So we'll probably get a lot of results by just doing the anywhere search. So I'm going to switch it to subject rather than anywhere, because anywhere is searching subject, its title, it's searching publisher, and it's searching author. So the call numbers here will be in alphabetical order. So if we keep scrolling through the family histories where Stone is listed, let me zoom in here, where Stone is listed as a subject field, those will all be first. So let's say you're looking through all these family histories for Stone. Okay. I'm going to have a lot of Stone family histories. All right. We're going to do more results per page because I think we only have 30. And then Georgia, and then Massachusetts. Oh, we're almost there. MSS 454. So any of the archival collections will display the call number as MSS 454. If it is a smaller collection that has only a few files, that would be in sort of the subtitle here. So for example, like with this one, how it has Essex, it would be files 1 through 2 if it was a smaller collection for the call number. And so here again, we have 5 boxes. We have the author as Thelma Steger Walt Welsh with her birth and death dates, and then all of the other sort of family subjects, as well as the scope and content note again. And then down here is once the finding aid has been uploaded to the OGS website, if you click this, it will take you back to the finding aid. Also, if a collection has been digitized, this link will take you to the landing page for the digitized collection. So we're trying to link up all that kind of stuff for you. All righty. So I'm going to stop sharing again really quick. Go back here. Alrighty, so I will go back to the end here. You look at all my pretty pictures again. We'll take questions, and I see we do have some questions in the chat. So if you have any other additional questions, please feel free to put them in the chat. And I think we got 10 minutes left, so.
The one that we have, it says a lot of the items you showed do not have a county designation. Will you be working further to attach county to items?
Yes. So one of the major sort of leaps, I would say, with the manuscript key being organized by subject was to work on adding county designations, especially to resources that were very county specific. So as I said, in the future, when we have more finding aids put on the website, the finding aid will always have a description of the counties that are covered. So for example, like Carol Bell's collection, since she was a professional genealogist and was working in counties across Ohio, her collection is so broad that it didn't necessarily warrant a note in the manuscript key, but her finding aid would describe all of the counties that she covers. So if the manuscript key doesn't tell you a county designation, the finding aid will. But yes, it is something that was important to me specifically, to kind of get more county designations on the manuscript key and in titles, especially when it was something that was very clearly one specific county.
Someone else is asking, what about family group sheets, and do you accept non-Ohio collections?
Okay, so for family group sheets, that falls under the library's purview. Our family group sheets are part of the library collection. Of course, family group sheets do appear in archival collections. With an archival collection, we wouldn't necessarily want it to be all family group sheets. It would more likely include other types of research and records. So the family group sheets are part of the library collection currently. And part of that database is searchable through our website.
And do we accept non-Ohio collections?
So we do not. It has to be majority Ohio ancestors. So it would have to be, I would say, like maybe 85–90% Ohio ancestors for the archives. We are pretty strong in terms of our Ohio connections.
The other question we have is, I'm curious about digitization. How is it decided in what order the parts of your collection are being digitized?
So currently OGS is focusing on parts of single family collections that are multifamily. So for example, the Sherwood family collection has a ledger. The patriarch of the family was a Sunday school teacher, so he had a ledger and a roster of all of his students who came in every Sunday for a couple of years. So that is something that would be a digitization candidate because it can help more families. So similarly with the rest of the collection, we would focus on digitizing or having a higher digitization priority for items that can serve multiple families. So for example, the Richland County naturalization records, or at least the first half of them, I would say. So the ones that were typed were digitized because they could help more people. So we're not necessarily going after family group sheets right away. It's more so focusing on either photographs or resources that could help multiple families. Just because space is a concern when you get to certain file sizes, it starts to get pretty big when you digitize entire collections. So we're trying to be mindful about the ones we do digitize.
Thank you. We have about a minute or so left. I don't know if you can go over, but one of the questions we have is, I learned that there's a codicil that a person can put in their will so that their genealogy research is willed to a particular institution. Do you receive collections this way?
Yes, we do. I think I had only been working here for about 2 or 3 weeks last year when we received such a collection from California. It was shipped to us freight. Your collection does not have to be shipped to us freight. It does not have to be that big. But yes, one of the first collections that I was here for was a collection that was willed to us through an estate.
And if anybody wants to unmute and ask a question, if they can't get it in the chat, that is fine. And if not, we're going to wrap up. I thank you, Jenna, and I encourage everyone to visit the OGS website, poke around, see what you see. If you're not a member, we certainly encourage it. It gets you discounts on lots of things, including our conferences, etc. So with that, we will wrap it up. This will be on our webinar page for future reference, probably in the next week or so. Anyway, thank you, Jenna. I appreciate your time.
Yes, and I just want to throw out there, please feel free to email me if you have any questions about the archives or about a particular collection that you're interested in. My email address is available under the Contact Us page, or you can message OGS directly to just the general OGS email, and it will get to me.
All right, great. Thank you.
Yes, thank you for everyone for attending.